Hello everyone and welcome back to my cosy corner of the internet. I'm Danielle and today I'm here to try and see how many books I can get through reading in the space of a day. Here in the UK it's currently a bank holiday, it's currently the one right at the very start of May, and with that I don't have to go into work. So I figured I would try to tackle as much of my sort of May TBR as I can. I won't be able to tackle all of it for certain, but there are with it certain things that I need to try and get done in a certain amount of time, just because they're library books, they're audio library books, NetGalley books, anything like that. So I want to try to keep on track of them. So I do have my notes here in terms of everything that I've got through. So I currently have technically finished two things on my May TBR off. There was one that I was reading, or well, listening to at the end of April that I finished off right at the start of May that I put onto here. And then I finished off Terry Pratchett's The Colour of Magic. I have read some of the Terry Pratchett Discworld series before, but I wanted to be able to listen to it and read it from the start again. They have up to, I think, number 13 as audiobooks through my library before I have to start taking out sort of the paper versions. So this morning I have already done a tiny little amount of listening to The Light Fantastic as well, which is, I think I want to say I'm about 2/3 of the way through at the minute. I normally listen to a lot of audiobooks on 2x speed, and I will end up listening to a bit more of it in a moment, just whilst I finish doing a few more chores around my flat before I can actually sit down and pick up a physical book. The reason I'm trying to get both of those read or listened to at the moment is because on the 8th of May, I should then be getting Equal Rights as the audiobook as well. So I want to make sure that that's sort of out of the way. And then the only other audiobook that I currently already have out is The Binding. And I have that just purely because I'd put in the request for it and then it came through last night and I didn't want to put it back on hold again. Otherwise, putting it on hold would have been all the way through until sort of, I believe it would have been basically until sort of the middle of June. But The Binding itself is, Emmett Farmer is working in the fields when a letter arrives summoning him to begin an apprenticeship. He will work for a bookbinder, a vocation that arouses fear, superstition and prejudice, but no one, neither he nor his parents, can afford to refuse. He will learn to handcraft beautiful volumes, and within each he will capture something unique and extraordinary, a memory. If there's something you want to forget, he can help. If there's something you need to erase, he can assist. Your past will be stored safely in a book, and you will never remember your secret, however terrible. In a vault under his mentor's workshop, row upon row of books and memories are meticulously stored and recorded. Then one day Emmett makes an astonishing discovery. One of them has his name on it. The Binding is an unforgettable magical novel, a boundary-defying love story and a unique literary event. So I definitely want to give that one a listen as well. And like I said, the fact that I sort of only have those ones on the go, I'll definitely be able to get through that before the end of May, even to the extent where I might end up getting a few more audiobooks out as well. But then in physical library books that I have, and I have until the 23rd of May to read these, but I have Yellowface by Rebecca Kwang, which I've seen so many people talking about that I wanted to obviously be able to actually kind of give it a read myself. And I went into my local library and the copy of it was right there. So this is one hell of a story. It's just not hers to tell. When failed writer June Hayward witnesses her rival Athena Lou die in a freak accident, she sees her opportunity and takes it. So what if it means stealing Athena's final manuscript? So what if it means borrowing her identity? And so what if the first lie is only the beginning? Finally, June has the fame she always deserved, but someone is about to expose her. What happens next is entirely everyone else's fault. So, definitely sounds like the kind of thing that I would enjoy anyway. But like I said, everyone talking about it so much has made me want to pick it up. Then I spotted here, and it's a bit more of a chunkier one, The Lady of the Ravens by Joanna Hickson. And this is two women in the shadows of history until their destinies are changed forever. Joanne Ver is 9 years old when she first visits the Tower of London, where she pleased to see her mother captive and imprisoned as the companion to be a deposed and broken queen. Now, years later, she has returned to serve another, Henry VII's wife, Elizabeth of York, at the first Tudor court. As the keeper of her secrets, Joan will face menaces other than the sharp beaks of the ravens as old rivalries whisper through the dark corridors of the tower. So, sounds kind of like a historical fiction thing that I'm definitely going to enjoy getting to listen to. And then this one here, we have Murder on the Menu by Alex Coombs, which might be one of the first ones that I start actually reading when I get to do the physical reading today. And this is Chef Charlie Hunter's arrival on the beautiful Chilterns is the fulfilment of a long-held dream to open her own restaurant in the idyllic countryside. The old forge on the village green seems just to be the place for her high-quality cooking. But instead of rural peace and a chance to lick her wounds, Charlie finds something ugly stirring under the chocolate box perfection. When a prominent local builder is found dead in suspicious circumstances, Charlie the outsider becomes the suspect. The only way to clear her name seems to be to find out who the real killer is. Luckily, she has allies, her student waitress, a kitchen porter making up in muscles what he lacks in brain, and a briskly efficient clairvoyant. Under all her kitchen craft, disciplined time in preparation and grim determination, Charlie will be as relentless in her quest to bring a murderer to justice as she is in creating the perfect meal. So I love things that are food related and obviously like crime kind of related, sort of murder mysteries. So that should be a pretty nice one to read. And like I say, it isn't that many pages overall. It's 310 pages and the writing is pretty chunky. So I should be able to get through that one fairly quickly. And then also I got Normal People by Sally Rooney out. I remember watching the adaptation at the time when it sort of was out in BBC stuff, and I wanted to give this a read. Again, it's a fairly short book, the writing's not too big, so I just want to give this an actual try to see what it's like, see what extra little snippets and bits there are. I obviously remember a fair amount of the adaptation, but there are definitely a lot of blanks in my head at this point as well. There are only sort of certain scenes that I remember. So I'm looking forward to giving that a go. A physical book, and this will be the very last one that I read in May, if I even get around to sort of reading it at all still, is The Maid by Nita Prose. I have technically started this, but then obviously where I own it, I've prioritised everything that I don't own over the last few days and sort of the last week or so. So I'm 58 pages in, so I haven't got particularly far in it at all. But this one it begins like any other day for Molly Gray, silently dusting her way through the luxury rooms of the Grand Regency Hotel. But when she enters suite 401 and discovers an infamous guest dead in his bed, a very messy mystery begins to unfold, and Molly's at the heart of it. Because if anyone can uncover the secrets beneath the surface, the fingerprints amongst the filth, it's the maid. And yeah, I do want to make sure I try to speed read this one at some point, because when I was in the library with my mum the other day, she nearly picked up the second one, and I had to point out to her that this is the first one. So I want to finish reading this so she can read it, and then she can see whether she wants to pick up the second one from the library or something as well. But that's not all on my list. Oh no. So in here is my iPad, and this is where all of my NetGalley books tend to end up. And as it's an audiobook, and obviously I just normally would listen on my phone. But I do have two on here. I have The Secret Menu by Xie Kwa, and this is essentially, what is the secret menu? Hidden from view but commonly known, it's the menu that insiders pick from to be assured of a delicious, authentic meal, often in immigrant-run restaurants. But there are secret menus in every aspect of life, cheat codes that promise to help us navigate a new home or a new life in the best way possible. A promise that if you just follow this formula, everything will be all right, even if we know that things don't always work out that way. Xie Minghua uses food, history, poetry, art, and the story of her coming of age to explore the deepest and most evocative aspects of what it means to belong to and succeed in a new home, and what it means to be Chinese. From her childhood in Malaysia to her family's immigration to the United States and her years in China, Kwa paints a wide-ranging portrait of the centuries of movements between countries and continents that have shaped Chinese culture and food as they adapted to each new place. Kwa's descriptions of food are lush and vivid, plumbing the historical, personal and philosophical depths of dishes and bringing in the difficult histories around Chinese immigration to America in complex and illuminating ways. In delicious prose that reads with the swiftness of a novel and the depth of a philosophical treatise, The Secret Menu shows us how the thinking and cooking lives are connected and how the hunt for harmony, success and a sense of belonging have helped generations of immigrants find their own menus for a delicious life filled with delights against the odds. So like I say, I love food related things. I love sort of actual kind of non-fiction and everything like that as well. So I did want to give that one a go. So that's definitely on my May list. And then I also just got accepted for The Deep and the Drowned by Ian Green, which is the first in a new fantasy trilogy, which is therefore risky because obviously if I enjoy this one, then I'm going to be stuck waiting for 2 more books in a trilogy to come out. But then we have Beneath a Sky Ruled by Gods and Monsters, a drowned land spreads, thousands of scattered isles, each its own dominion, each a deadly trap for the unwary. But for those bold enough to ply these turbulent waters, there is a trade to be done and money to be made. For a decade, Killian has sailed between the Strait Kingdoms and the Crown Isles, enough time to run up debts, break promises and make enemies in every port. Now foes and bad luck are quickly outnumbering his fortune and friends. With the seas blazing with war, gods and majors clash to keep their heads above the rising tide. Killian must sail into the storm and repay the biggest debt he owes, no matter the cost. Which sounds definitely super interesting as well. So it'd be good to get my sort of head stuck into perhaps a more fantasy book, or compared to obviously the Terry Pratchett books are fantasy, but they're both definitely kind of sort of different levels. I view Terry Pratchett fantasy as being kind of quite whimsical. I'm not going to say childlike, but it's definitely a lot softer perhaps than some could be. So that one will definitely be a good read to get to as well. I don't have to specifically do it this month in May, but if possible I want to obviously try to clear my NetGalley so I'm all caught up with everything. So yeah, that's currently my May sort of TBR to be tackled. And like I said, it's currently 7:48 here on this Bank Holiday Monday. So I'm going to keep listening to my audiobook, do some chores, and then sitting hopefully down to do sort of some reading of one of the physical library books. I will provide you with check-ins throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, I'll go through how much I listened to in terms of audio time and then how many pages I managed to physically read as well. Just because I think it'd be good to be able to see how much it's possible to read when you don't have anything else going on with your day particularly. So it's now 10:55, so nearly 11 o'clock. And I did indeed manage to finish listening to The Light Fantastic. And I've also ended up getting 13% of the way into the binding. I really enjoyed The Light Fantastic. I found that obviously it built on sort of the colour of magic a lot more, but it also mentioned a few things that made me chuckle that I didn't necessarily appreciate when I was listening as sort of a much younger reader. There was a bit where sort of there was a explanation that no, they won't be describing one of the female kind of heroines, sort of people that is mentioned in sort of a really beautiful, elaborate way. And it made me chuckle because there are so many fantasy books that do that, that do go around sort of mentioning so what exactly, you know, they look at all of their curves, crevices, all of their perfections, you know, so I definitely kind of chuckled at that and a few other bits throughout the book as well. So that was definitely nice. And obviously it finished in a way that meant that that mini sort of story arc has kind of finished, but they still managed to do a little bit more sort of world building and character development for the next ones that come along as well. And then like I said, I'm 13% of the way into the binding and it's definitely captivated me. It's definitely quite interesting. You know, we've sort of had it so they've been spending it's very early on in the book where they go off to become this apprentice. So we're still kind of trying to find out about them and the person that they're sort of the apprentice under, and the way that bookbinding and everything works. We are pretty much as in the dark as much as Emma is. So, but we did learn a few extra pieces of information about why Emma was selected to be the apprentice and everything as well. So that's definitely enjoyable so far. But I have been going around doing quite a few different bits of sort of carrying on cleaning, tidying, putting things up on the wall. I have a few more things that I might potentially drill up, but then after so I might listen to a little bit more of the audiobook, and then I am going to start reading Murder on the Menu. So yeah, I figured I'd do that check-in, seeing as I have sort of finished a whole audiobook. I'm a bit of a way through another one as well. It's obviously been a few hours since I caught up with you. But yeah, making decent progress on that list so far. Let's see whether I can keep it up for the rest of the day or not. Figured I would do another check-in. It's currently 20 to 2 in the afternoon, and I'm pretty much halfway through this book. I think maybe just under. I'm about to start page 129 out of 310, so okay, just over a third then. So I'm on to chapter 18 at the minute, and I'm enjoying the book. I don't really necessarily have any huge glaring issues with it. I will say that it's perhaps not as murder focused perhaps as I expected it to be. You know, we took until sort of 60 pages in before kind of the first big thing seemed to happen, I suppose. And it just, you know, it's been nice to sort of see perhaps some characters getting involved, getting to know each of the characters more before we had that big event. But obviously I suppose I'm quite used to sort of a lot of books like this, perhaps the event happening and then you getting to know the characters that is surrounded by your main character. But obviously they decided not to do it this way around, and I suppose that could be kind of linked in a way to kind of a menu plan of, we have the starter of the sort of the warm, not even necessarily the starter, the kind of the pre-meal kind of canapé sort of thing, where we've got the sort of the build-up, the explanation, the introduction, the sort of whetting of the appetite. And then I'd say at the moment it feels like the murder was pretty much the starter. And I'd say we've moved on kind of the main bit now, where there's definitely some suspicions. There's been a few more strange happenings going on, and our main character is now sort of trying to investigate the murder essentially, whilst also running the cafe. And there seems to be a few issues going on with the cafe as well. There's definitely a lot going on sort of for Charlie, and sort of how she's able to navigate all of these different things and navigate moving to this new place and meeting all of these people and everything that's going on. But the minute it's all right, it's probably currently coming in at sort of a 3.5 star. It isn't blowing me away at the moment. I wouldn't be encouraged enough to read. I think there's 3 more books in this series. I wouldn't necessarily be encouraged enough to kind of continue reading it. But like I said, I'm about a third of the way, just somewhere between a third and a half the way through. So there is chance for it to kind of improve, get better, for me to kind of feel differently sort of to this book, and then perhaps consider wanting to read some more of the books as well. But at the moment, I'm definitely not necessarily fully inclined to do that. Like I said, it's a pleasant enough book. I will say that the only other bit that's kind of bothering me, and this is a very specific thing, is obviously it's based in a real England place, and, you know, it makes reference to, say, London, all that kind of thing. But then it also, there was, in the first chapter or two, it made reference to a couple of other real life people, you know, and it was like, oh, you would have mistake, would you think this of this person? I think not. And it said that exact, basically same sentence, just with a different sort of celebrity person's name. Like I said, within like a few pages, a chapter or so of each other. And And so that was right at the very start. So it kind of made me have a bit of fear that that was going to be how it continues. We haven't had that particular exact sentence structure for a while, that exact phrase, but it is still in the back of my mind. And it just felt that Alex Coombs was kind of forcing that to be the case, to sort of provide links to mention sort of real life people, celebrities that are sort of Charlie Hunter in this case would kind of respect and admire and want to be seen similar as. And it just felt perhaps a little bit too forced to essentially name drop those people in there. But like I say, it's a decent enough book so far. I'm making, like I say, I'm on page 129, so I'd say I'm making reasonable progress. But hopefully I'll be able to finish this in the next couple of hours and then figure out my next plan of action. So I'll catch up with you again probably once I've finished this, or if it turns out that there's something really dramatic that happens, I might do another early check-in to be like, oh, we've had a curveball turn up. But at the minute, that hasn't been that happen. We're just kind of going very much along A to B without any sort of direction or anything. But there's definitely a chance for that to happen, I suppose. So let's see. Hopefully as well, we're not going to meet too many more new people. I am sort of starting to, I feel like we keep getting them added in, and it's not necessarily making it hard to come track to. It isn't sort of an unmanageable amount to track, but it is definitely starting to get on the pretty hefty side in terms of character numbers. But we shall see. I'm continuing to have an open mind, and like I say, I'm enjoying it so far. It's just before 5 o'clock. I ended up getting to listen to a tiny bit more audiobook because I still had a few sort of chore kind of things that I wanted to do. So I did end up doing that before I went back to reading Murder on the Menu. And I have now finished this completely as well. So I'm definitely going to probably stick with a 3.5 stars. You know, it definitely became more drama filled. The plot got a bit more complicated. We didn't end up with any more characters particularly after my last grumble, which is always a positive thing. But it reached a point where it became incredibly obvious as to who actually was responsible for all of the events that were going down in here, to the extent that I was kind of getting a bit frustrated, like, please stop being such an idiot, please stop like being so blindsided by all these different things and just pay attention to what is happening. In fact, pretty much a scene just after I'd sort of spoke with you last, where kind of Charlie was in pretty serious danger, I twigged at kind of who it probably was and what had happened. So it was a bit frustrating to kind of find out that early. Like I said, that meant it was, you know, it was probably about halfway point in the book, if not a little bit earlier. And, you know, like I said, it wasn't a bad book. It was just, it led me there too quickly. It's amusing because I've complained sometimes about how sort of say when I listened to the guest list by Lucy Foley, it didn't lead me to the conclusion or anything like that. It kind of gave me too many options. This kind of gave me tunnel vision, but tunnel vision to the answer. It didn't necessarily detract from getting to understand why it happened or what caused those events in the lead up to them and all of them coming together. But it definitely sort of, yeah, it just didn't wow me very much. If it was kind of a harsh day, I might have given it a 3, but I think a 3.5 is fair because, like I say, it was still sort of a nice little bit of development. There were some nice scenes in here. It all kind of merged together, kind of moved along one by one quite nicely. But like I said, I'm not sure that I would read any of the other 3 books that follow in this series. It is the Old Forge Cafe mystery series, which makes sense because that's the name of Charlie's cafe. But I mean, I potentially could enjoy it if sort of perhaps more, because I'd know the characters. I'd have perhaps an attachment to Charlie, to Jess, to what even was the name of the other one? That is a good question. That's how, I'm not going to say how memorable some of these characters are. He was he was an amusing character. He was the light relief character for everything that happened in here, but his name has already escaped me. Francis. His name is Francis. You know, I think knowing those three, perhaps knowing D.I. Slattery and everything going into another book would make it quite an enjoyable one. So I might end up potentially going to book 2, but I won't be going out of my way to rush to do it sort of next week or something like that. But yeah, there we go. That is another one sort of finished. So what I am going to do now is, where it's becoming 5 o'clock, I am going to go ahead and listen to some more of the audiobook. I think I ended up getting up to 22% or something like that earlier when I was doing the rest of my chores. I'm going to listen to that whilst I'm cooking, and then I might potentially start Normal People. So I doubt that I'll be able to get this finished. Particularly the writing is smaller than it was for the last one. So it's probably about a similar kind of word count overall. There's less pages. It's 266 pages, but like I said, the font's a little bit smaller, so it probably works out pretty similar. So yeah, I'm going to listen to more of the audiobook of The Binding, which I'm definitely really enjoying. And I realised that there's reference to Castleford in there. And I don't know whether that's the one that's maybe a 10-minute drive away from me, or whether it's just a place name that they plucked out of, whether it's sort of the inspiration for it, or what. But I definitely found that kind of quite an interesting coincidence, at least, because it obviously isn't mentioned anywhere on the back of the book or anything like that. So yeah, I'm going to listen to that, and I will catch up with you again later on, probably this evening at this point, or if I happen to get to a point in this book where I want to sort of provide a bit of an update, but otherwise it'll probably just be for my sort of end of the day check-in. Alright, so it's currently about 10 o'clock at night, which is why it's kind of gloomy and going off of the sort of big light, but I am about to head to bed to get ready for work tomorrow. But I did end up reading, I want to say definitely about halfway. I'm on page 130 of Normal People out of 266 pages, so pretty much exactly halfway through, and I'm definitely enjoying it and trying to get into it a little bit more. But I definitely found it to be a little jarring at the beginning in terms of the writing style, the way that it's sort of written as he says, she says throughout the entire thing is a lot more. It's not what I'm used to, so it definitely took a little bit to get into it. Sort of, it makes sense to be doing it as kind of an outsider looking in, rather than choosing one of their perspectives, or kind of the other alternative would obviously be to do chapters where you're alternating points of view. So I understand why it's done the way that it is. It just took a little bit for me to kind of get into it ultimately. And I think that in some ways, the way that it's written is definitely what helps to turn it into kind of the adaptation. It works perfectly, obviously sort of in screen format, where you just get to miss out of the he says, she says sort of bits from it, and it becomes a lot more of a natural flow. But I'm definitely enjoying the story, the little added bits in, the bits I'm kind of remembering that sort of then came up in the adaptation as well. But it's perhaps not as mind-blowing to me as I was hoping for it to be. I know that a few people prefer Conversations with Friends, some people prefer Normal People, and I think there's sort of maybe a couple of other books by Sally Rooney that I definitely feel that everybody has a different opinion on which is their favourite book by her. So I might end up potentially reading some of the other ones. I'm not enjoying this. I'm just, like I said, the writing style for me is kind of, it's a lot of effort for my brain to process, which I think is why I've been reading it relatively slowly, because the he says, she says just it's not something that I'm used to. It's something that is kind of making me have to think and use my brain cell a little bit more to be able to put it into process and to visualise it and to sort of be able to create that scene in my head. But yeah, obviously I have work and everything tomorrow. I might end up trying to read a little bit before work or on my lunch break or something as well. We'll see how busy I end up being, to how much energy I have. If not, I'll end up definitely, hopefully, reading it over the sort of next couple of days after work as well. But I will share my final thoughts with you all the way when it comes around to my sort of what I read in May video as well. But I hope you enjoyed catching up with me and seeing kind of what I'm hoping to read throughout May, and then seeing how much I've ended up reading today. I did get to listen to some more of my audiobook as well. I think that I ended up listening to, in terms of actual amount of audiobooks between the Light Fantastic and the Binding, probably listened to about 6-ish hours, maybe a little bit more, but also I listened to it on 2 times speed, so I wasn't actually listening to it for that much. And then I haven't done the page count for it, but we were on 130, and then Murder on the Menu, there's 310, so did around 440-ish pages for the book. So I think I've definitely made decent progress. Like I said, I was only able to kind of do as much as I could because of the audiobooks whilst I was going around doing different things in the house. Otherwise, I would have just read basically a book and a half. So definitely decent progress, and definitely made me feel a little bit better about where I'm at going into sort of reading, and being able to work through all of those things that I do have on my May TBR before the kind of deadlines approach as well. But if you are still here, then thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. I hope that you've had a wonderful time reading some really good books recently. If you aren't already, please do consider liking and subscribing. But until I do see you again, take care and bye for now.